before I got sober, there was something that I faced. It quite literally immediately put me on a different life path, right? But it's not about how bad alcohol and weed are for you, how much of my creative expression, whatever way you want to look at it, how much of myself do I want to experience in this lifetime? Felt like the whole world was against the decision I made for myself. When I look back at my journey to being where I am right now, and even when I look forward, looking at my trajectory, seeing the incredible things that I'm gonna do in this lifetime, there's a lot of big decisions I made. There's a lot of big decisions I will continue to make. But there is really one key decision that completely changed everything for me. As soon as I made this decision, the amount of money I made, the amount of mental peace that I had, the environments, the rooms that I was able to get in, the alignment with what I did to make the kind of money I make, everything completely changed in a very short period of time following this one decision. It quite literally immediately put me on a different life path. And I can't thank myself enough for making that decision. So I want to talk about it here with you today. Now again, there's a lot of factors involved here, but that one decision that changed everything for me was getting sober. Now for some more context, I was always a work hard, play hard kind of person. I want everyone to understand it's not like I was throwing my life away by any means. I liked to party on the weekend. That's about it. But I knew that both alcohol and marijuana, in all honesty, were holding me back. There was something in me that knew that I wanted to go all out in this lifetime. I wanted to experience 100% of myself. And every time I thought about that, I knew I needed to cut out those substances to be able to be clear, to be connected, to actually experience more of my full potential. Now, I'm going to be very open. I don't think anyone really can grasp the idea or understanding that we have infinite potential that can flow through us. So I don't think we can ever reach our full potential, but trying to open up and experience as much of that potential as possible was my mission. That was a decision that I made. So in this video, when I talk about getting sober, I want everyone to understand it doesn't have to do with the substances itself as much. Yes, there will be a factor of that, right? But it's not about how bad alcohol and weed are for you. And I never really want to push that on anyone, right? Like if someone feels called to it, I highly recommend it. If not, there's so much that I learned along this journey that you can apply even to other habits, other vices, whatever it is that will completely change the trajectory of your life. This decision to get sober was far more than cutting out substances. It was to show up for myself in an entirely new way. And so I want to pull some of those top lessons that I've learned along my journey and give it all to you so that you can apply it wherever it makes sense for you and experience a different life path, more of your true potential, like I was saying before. So before I go into those lessons, there's a really important question that I think everyone watching this video needs to ask themselves. And this is the question that kind of prefaced me getting sober, actually. This question in itself can change your life, if I'm being honest. Right before I got sober, there was something that I faced. And I think I actually even heard an interview with John Mayer, I believe, don't quote me on that, but there was someone who I look up to that, posed this question somewhere. And the question was essentially, how much of my potential do I want to experience in my life? And there's no right answer, right? Like whatever comes up, whatever you truly feel in your heart, you go with. So if I ask myself that honestly, how much of my potential, how much of Adam do I want to experience in this life? And that answer is 70%. Then I have to be okay with that. And then I will go forward accordingly. If that answer is 40%, then you know what? I'm gonna run with it. If that answer is 100%, which is actually the scariest answer for me in all honesty, then I also have to commit to that. So what I did was I asked myself that question, the question that changed everything. How much of Adam, how much of my potential, how much of my creative expression, whatever way you want to look at it, how much of myself do I want to experience in this lifetime? And when I asked that question, I had an immediate response. The intuition was right there. It said 100%. Now I'm going to be honest, I was terrified. Like I said, the 100% answer was the one that actually scared me the most. I didn't want it to be that answer. And so I don't know what it was, maybe a Wednesday or a Tuesday. And I remember I told myself, I will give myself until Friday to sit and think about this. Now looking back, I should have made that decision right away because I knew the answer right away. And this is how it is for most people. Most people don't realize they have the answers to the decisions they need to make. They know what they should do, They just don't allow themselves to actually make that scary decision. So I did that too. I sat in indecision. I negotiated with myself for days, which is an awful way to live. And on the Friday when it came, I faced myself fully and I said, you know what? I know it's 100%. I want to experience 100% in this lifetime. And so I'm gonna do it. And so with that decision, a stream of consciousness of other intuitive downloads came immediately. Because with every answered question, a natural second question comes up. So the first question was, how much do I want to experience in this lifetime? The very next question is, what is holding me back from experiencing 100%? And when I thought about that, it was very, very clear. One of the main things that was holding me back, again, even though I was just a weekend warrior, was substances. I knew I couldn't be my full self if I didn't actually completely cut that out of my life. And as I thought about it, even the way that I approached it, even just doing it on weekends, you know, if you drink and you party or whatever it is on a Saturday, it takes you like a solid 4 or 5 days to recover. By the time you're finally getting back to your true self and actually connecting to source and getting into flow and allowing the creative juices to flow through you and everything like that, you're pretty much right back at the next weekend and you're just starting that cycle over. At least that's how it was for me. And so when I made the true decision that I wanted to do what I could to experience 100% of myself in this lifetime, and therefore came to the realization that I had to cut out alcohol and weed, I actually made a committed decision that I would do that. I would listen to my intuition and I would go forward and do what it takes to cut those out of my life. So it started with me reading a book. I read a book to educate myself. I started that book making fun of it and drinking while reading it, literally. I know it sounds crazy. And by the end of that book, I didn't touch alcohol or weed for like 2 weeks by the time I had finished it. And because I wanted to take it seriously, I wanted the proper help. So I actually reached out to the only person I knew who didn't drink. I found out that they hadn't actually gotten sober. They never really drank in the first place, but they were an incredible mentor that actually connected me to someone who could help me get sober. You know, a sponsor is what it's called in the AA, and you know, the AA world, the 12 steps of AA. And so I followed that path and I met this guy, I think once a week. Sometimes we'd go 2 to 3 weeks in between meeting, depending on how long each step took. I actually did do the 12 steps of AA. I think it's a fantastic program. Just like this video, goes far beyond anything to do with substances or quitting alcohol. It is a personal development program about you. And that was the start of my journey. Now, I want to get into some of those lessons, like I said, because they can apply to anything in your life. And I think it's some of the most important things that everyone needs to learn or experience at some point in their life if they're really trying to experience what they're meant for, more of that true potential. So that first big lesson that happened as a result of me committing to something and sticking to it was what changed in me and who I became when I started to trust myself from actually sticking to a commitment. And I know it sounds simple, but it's actually very sad. Even you listening to this right now might have already experienced what it's like when you don't show up for yourself. And then you stop trusting yourself. You don't keep your word. You say you're gonna do these things, or there's things you know you're gonna do, but you never actually do them. You're constantly breaking promises to yourself. And what do you think happens when you do that? Your relationship with yourself erodes. If you say you're gonna do something, it doesn't mean anything to you. And none of those things you say you're gonna do move into the expression of it, the actual action, the commitment, the showing up for yourself. And this is a very dangerous place to be in life. Unfortunately, that was me at that point. I had known that I wanted to quit substances for a while. There were things that I knew I was meant to do. There were things that I told myself I would do, but I never really believed myself because I had a track record of not showing up for myself when I promised myself that I would. I was constantly pushing things off to the next day. I will start tomorrow. I will start next week. And then up until tomorrow or the next week when I said I would quit, just not taking care of myself or not doing anything to move the needle even towards being prepared to do that next week. And so over time, I had ruined my relationship with myself. So this was one of the biggest things that changed who I was when I quit alcohol. I told myself I was gonna do something and I stuck to it. And trust me when I say I faced a lot of adversity. When I say adversity, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that crazy. But having to deal with comments and other people not actually accepting my decision, having other people trying to convince me to go back to drinking alcohol and smoking weed, the amount of people who said I didn't have a problem and I didn't have to do it, rather than supporting me, was honestly incredibly shocking. And at the time, even now in today's day, it's become a lot more normal for people to not drink or not smoke weed. Not only in my own individual life for sure, but just in general, there's kind of a wave out of sobriety. Now, at the time, that wasn't going on. So not only with my actual individual life, with my family and everything like that, but society as a whole looked at sobriety as this crazy thing. And when people would hear that I was sober, they wouldn't congratulate me, they wouldn't ask any good questions about it. They'd say, oh, were you really bad? How bad were you? Why did you have to do that? Why can't you drink? And it was really hard to deal with as someone who was already having to show up for themselves. It felt like the whole world was against the decision I made for myself. So holding that decision and committing to what I had committed to for myself through that adversity completely changed my relationship with myself. And what ended up happening was I started to be the kind of person to myself who would do what they said they were gonna do. And when this happens, trust me when I say this is lethal. I felt like I could do anything, genuinely. Because if I could make a commitment and follow through with it, no matter what was going on, then what else could I commit to? What else could I go and do and show up for myself for? And so this led to an incredible amount of momentum. I actually shortly after got so excited about actually trusting myself for the first time in my life that I started pushing the limit on what I would show up for myself for. I remember about 3 or 4 months into sobriety, I read a book by Robin Sharma, incredible book called The 5 a.m. Club. And the premise was waking up every single day at 5 a.m. and meditating, working out, and reading or taking in some valuable information every single day at 5 a.m. no matter what. And I did that. They said to commit to, I think it was 2 months. I committed to 3 full months every single day. I think there was one day in the whole 3 months that I didn't wake up at 5 a.m. for and do those 3 things. And so what happened was that relationship with myself compounded because it led into me committing to other things. And as I committed to other things and showed up for myself, I continued to ingrain that belief that I was the kind of person who did what they said they were gonna do. And when you have that behind you, you will start to feel like you can do anything. You can commit to bigger and greater things and then experience the unfolding of them because you know you're the kind of person who shows up for yourself and who makes things happen. And in my opinion, your relationship with yourself is the most important thing in your life. And it bleeds into everything else you do. Every single relationship, every single job or business, everything. So for people watching this video, if you want to implement that for yourself, start small. It doesn't have to be cutting out substances, but how can you show up for yourself every single day, even in a small way, to start rebuilding that relationship with yourself? And as you start to show up for yourself in that way, how can you increase it? What other ways can you show up for yourself? What can you commit to and stick to rebuild that relationship? Now, the second thing that changed absolutely everything here was the community around me. As I said at first, a lot of people weren't accepting, but also just understanding that I naturally wanted to be around people who prioritized their health, prioritized their business and making money and their relationship with themselves, like we just talked about, over partying or one night, fiascos or the spur of the moment pleasures, if that makes sense. And so getting into different rooms, different communities full of people who prioritized different things was one of the other biggest things that changed my life, that was all rooted from or tied to that decision to get sober. Now, I'm not gonna go too deep into this because I have in other videos and I will in other videos in the future, but just understanding that as you start to align your values to the life that you actually want and get around other people with those same priorities and values, again, it will compound in ways that as of right now, you can't even fathom. And this pairs perfectly with the next one. how you prioritize your money, time, and energy. Before I had gotten sober, when it came to having fun, or honestly, escaping was what I was always doing. Alcohol, marijuana, going out and eating a ton of food that wasn't good for me. I never held back on my time, money, or energy with those things. Any amount of money that it would take for me to get high or drink or have a good time, as I was saying, I would automatically use. I would automatically spend my money in that way. And this is an incredible audit for you to do on your life. If you're not where you want to be in life, look at where you spend your money, your time, and your energy, because it will show you exactly why you have the results you have. When I got sober, I stopped prioritizing my money in those ways. And what did I start to prioritize instead? I started to prioritize personal development above anything else. My health, physically, spiritually, and mentally, and my environment and the community around me. So almost every single one of my dollars and most of the time that I had and all of the energy, the mental and emotional energy, was being redirected to building a life that I love. I started spending my time and money on building businesses, taking money from my current business and building other businesses that were more aligned. And that changed everything for me. So trust me when I say it's far more than just cutting out substances. It's who you believe yourself to be. This will change everything in your life. I promise you.